My name is Aimee Ramirez, class of 2007, AIMEERAMIREZ.
My name is Joe Ramirez, class of 2007, honorary class of 13 and 15, JOSEPH.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Wash your hand up here.
Is Marshall with you?
Yeah, he's right
There you
He
go.
said he
That's
can't
that
hear.
works better. 'Cause it looks like he's
Excuse me?
looking way
He
up.
said he can't hear?
What's that?
He's on.
Testing, testing. Can you hear us?
Can you hear
Marsh?
now?
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So, prior to attending Princeton, did you attend a public or private school?
I attended a private school before coming to Princeton.
Okay.
Mm.
And did you attend private school in the U.S. or overseas?
I attended a private school in the U.S.
Okay.
Growing up, I attended public schools until high school. During high school, I attended private schools that were actually a boarding school, both in Nebraska and in New Hampshire, before coming to Princeton.
Okay. And how did you prepare for Princeton socially and intellectually?
I didn't do anything specifically to prepare for Princeton, academically and socially. I think just my life experience, growing up in private school setting, socially, just being with my family, doing, trips, just the normal stuff, I guess I would say, that we did. Well, there wasn't anything really you could do, I think, to prepare. It just happened, so.
I remember, or in looking back, the way I prepared for Princeton academically and socially was that I took the most demanding classes in my high school that I could, that were offered. I also attended summer programs. I forget some of them off the top of my head, but there were summer enrichment programs. So I was from Nebraska originally, attended a program in Chicago at Northwestern University. I attended a program also at Babson College in Massachusetts. I don't remember exactly how I got connected to these programs, but those were enrichment experiences that I had where I met students from across the country and felt additional preparation for Princeton in that way. I also attended a boarding school on the East Coast for my senior year of high school. That was a very different experience for me, but one that I look back and know very much prepared me for a transition to Princeton, both academically and socially, especially the type of students from across the country and world that I would be interacting with and experiencing at Princeton.
Okay, thank you. Amy, what were your expectations coming to Princeton, and did those expectations were those expectations met?
Yeah, I think my expectations of Princeton were, this was going to be a tough transition, moving across the country for me. I'm originally from California. I knew academically it was going to be rigorous. All my life I've taken rigorous courses, but I didn't quite know what that would look like in this setting. And I was just really excited and intellectually curious about the different course offerings. I think initially it was really overwhelming to take a look at the course book of your freshman year, or before that they said pick your classes, so that was overwhelming, as I said. But then once I was here, it was just really exciting to be in a new environment, meet different people, try different things that I had never done before. Mm-hmm.
Joe?
Can you remind me of the question, please?
What were your expectations coming to Princeton, and were those expectations met?
I think part of my expectation of Princeton was to meet incredible people, to be surrounded by talented classmates who would challenge me. In those ways, my expectations were certainly met. In terms of my academics, I thought I would follow the recommendations or course requirements, and earn my diploma. I think I wasn't aware of the role that research plays at a university like Princeton, the role that kind of finding your passion and connecting your academic passion with career opportunities. I wasn't really aware of how that worked at a place like Princeton. And so while I think I did well in my classes, I struggled with kind of putting together a program that really made sense for me. So I completed all the requirements, but when I look back, I think I would have chosen a number of different classes and maybe a different pathway in terms of my academic experience. It wasn't something I was prepared for, of how do you choose classes, how do you select a program, how do you really explore your interests and move forward in the curriculum and beyond at a place like Princeton.
Okay, thank you. Amy, did you feel that you fit in when you arrived to Princeton?
I think initially when I arrived at Princeton, I think like everyone, I mean, a college student arriving on a bigger campus, I did struggle a little bit to fit in, you know, just the students I was around. I did a summer program, a lot of athletes. There wasn't really anyone from my background or experience, but I did actually find some friends, and then especially once I moved into my room, my roommates and I really connected. So I did find that group of friends that then stayed with me throughout, and I did find my other group of friends, I would say, through Ballet Folklorico, which was our Mexican folk dance group. So I did fit in. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Joe, did you feel that you fit in when you arrived to Princeton?
In some ways, I felt that I fit in the sense that I was able to connect with a lot of people from across the class. I was the only person from Nebraska. I've been in many scenarios or situations where I'm the only person from Nebraska. And so
Marsh, can you mute your phone, please? I'm so sorry.
No
about
problem.
that.
No problem. Gives me a chance to maybe reset my question or my answer.
Okay.
So I felt that I fit in immediately at Princeton. I felt comfortable meeting many different people. I felt maybe not able to, immediately I wasn't able to make deep friendships at Princeton. And so while I knew a lot of people, I could see a lot of familiar faces across campus as I went about my day. I wasn't able to really develop deep friendships early on at my time at Princeton. Mm-hmm. That was something that others had advised me just to be aware of, in that those friendships take time, and that maybe folks you meet in your first few days, while there's great excitement and you'll make connections early on, it does take a little bit of time to make deep friendships. So while I felt in some ways I could go to an eating club or go to a class or an activity and see people and strike up conversations easily, it did take a while for me to make really deep friendships at Princeton. But I think some of my previous experience of coming from Nebraska and being the only person from Nebraska in a certain way kind of created conditions for me to connect and meet others from across the institute. I also came to Princeton knowing a few folks from my high school. So while I didn't know them well, there were some people from my high school, my boarding school that I had attended, that were also at Princeton. So they provided another kind of support and just friendly kind of person I could connect with.
Okay, thank you. Amy, what was your major, and were there many other Latino students in your major? And did that play a role in your choice of major?
My major at Princeton was in anthropology. I did also have a certificate in Italian language and culture and teacher preparation. Were there a lot of Latinos in anthropology? I mean, I don't know overall if there were a lot. There were definitely some. I think for me, that really didn't play a role in why I selected anthropology. I think for me, I was really intrigued by anthropology because it's the study of people, of human culture, and just the different ways that we as humans express ourselves, right? Like for me, why was it that I had a hard transition, or why was it that here on the East Coast, you know, if you wave at someone, they think like, ooh, you know, that's kind of off-settling. So all of that I learned was anthropology and studying that and looking more deeply into that. So for me, I liked anthropology because I could also study identity And I think for me, coming here, being in a new location and in a different college experience from where, for example, like my mom went to school in California, was really formative and just exciting that this was something I could study, anthropology.
Great.
Joe, what was your major, and were there any other Latino students in your major? And do you think that played a role when you made the choice of your major?
So, like Amy, I also studied anthropology. I earned certificates in Latin American studies and Spanish and Portuguese, Spanish language, literature primarily. In terms of why I selected anthropology, I took courses in a lot of different areas. My first 2 years, I remember distinctly taking 9 different courses in 8 different areas of study in my first year. And so I had a difficult time kind of making a choice or finding an area that I thought would be a good fit for me. I thought I was going to be politics, international relations. I took my first course in international relations and said, I need to find something else. So it's not a great fit for me. Fortunately, I did end up in anthropology. I say end up because it took me a while to find my way to that department. But I think I really enjoyed the opportunity to study community, to study culture. Study abroad was an opportunity that was easily kind of woven into the anthropology curriculum. It was something that was supported. So unlike other areas who said, or students who said, I can't study abroad because I'll then be off of my curriculum here at Princeton, I was fortunate in that the anthropology department was very encouraging of that. And so I had a number of international experiences, both in terms of study abroad, but as well as summer experiences as well. So the number of Latino students in the major, I don't think was a determinant of where I ended up, but I think what topics I was able to study, the faculty and the support that I had as a Latino student, I think certainly was part of my decision to major in anthropology.
And he followed me, he copied me.
That's right. So Amy chose to major in anthropology
And
before
then he's
I
like,
did.
oh, okay, sounds good.
And we actually had the same advisor as
For our senior thesis.
For our senior
Oh, really?
thesis, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
So
Amy, did you take any courses that touched on Latino-related issues?
Yes, I did take a course that touched upon Latino issues. I don't remember the title of the course, but one of the things that struck me about it was that we studied actually the area where I grew up. I grew up in Montebello, California, or Monterey Park, or Alhambra, the San Gabriel Valley, essentially, of LA. And I remember reading a book from the 50s about what an interesting community this was and place it was because of the Asian experience or the Latino experience and just these different groups that were in this little pocket of LA and how that kind of evolved over time. And as I'm reading about it, I was thinking, that's where I'm from. That's me. It was a really unique experience, and I think that was pretty cool. And then as far as other Latino topics per se, I think just any classes that talked about identity. I also, now that I'm thinking about it, took a course on Mexico City, Havana, and I think it was Buenos Aires. It was a film course, and there was literature, so we watched movies about how those cities were kind of captured in time and represented a unique type of Latinidad in a way. It was a pretty unique experience. So.
how about your art history class?
Thank you. I also did take a art class with a visiting professor from UCLA that studied the ancient art of I guess it was Monte Alban, and looking at old writings essentially and art and how that was painted of I forget what the rabbit was, 12 deer or something like that. But we actually did get to go to Mexico and visit, I think during our spring break, and actually go to the sites and go to Oaxaca and meet the people and get to see kind of some of how those ancient traditions are still carried on today. My roommate and I love that class. We ate crickets and got to taste mezcal, that was made by the people who lived in the village, and it was a really fun experience. So, thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Joe, did you take any courses that touched on Latina-related issues?
So when I think of the courses that I took, many of those that were focusing on Latino-related issues were within the program of Latin American Studies.
It'll pass. Let's just see if it'll pass. It's humming over your audio. Oh man. It's loud.
Take a lawnmower, maybe? Or a lawnmower?
Okay,
There you go.
No problem. I can reset. So when I look back on the courses that I took, some of those that were focusing on Latino-related issues were through the program in Latin American Studies. And so many of them were focused on Latin American countries. I think of a course on tango that I took within the Department of Spanish and Portuguese. Some of the politics and economics courses also focused on Latin America. I think during our time, there weren't the available offerings of the Latino experience in the United States. At least there may have been some, but I wasn't aware of them or didn't find those particular courses. The program in Latino Studies was established after Amy and I graduated. So we were excited to see the additional offerings and the focus on the Latino experience in the United States after we had graduated. And we were supportive and played a role in advocating for such courses. It was one of the things I remember in seeking to earn a certificate in the program in Latin American Studies. They indicated that you needed to do research not on Latin American issues here in the United States, but those that were part of Latin America. And so I kind of struggled to meet that requirement, but in the end was fortunate to have approval that the work that I did qualified for the certificate in Latin American Studies.
Awesome, thank you so much. Amy, did you, as a Latina, feel like your professors at Princeton had different reactions towards yourself or minorities in general or females of any way?
Did I think that professors had a different reaction towards me or others because I was Latina? I didn't. I felt very supported by my professors. Since a lot of my classes were in anthropology or my certificates in Italian, I was in small classes, so I had really close relationships with my professors. I felt they were really approachable. That's one of the things I enjoyed here at Princeton was if I would send an email, if I needed to set up a meeting, there were responsive professors throughout. I always felt I was listened to. I felt the professors took time to get to know me, but I think that started with my initiative to approach them. It wasn't like I wasn't going to just wait there. I had to advocate and go speak up for myself. But I did feel really supported throughout in all the various departments that I took courses in.
Joe, did you, as a Latino, feel like your professors reacted to you or any students that were of minority differently?
Yes, so I have, I'm trying to think. In my own experience, I didn't feel that, or in my own experience, I felt professors were very supportive of me and my work. I think there were times that I could recall in economics class, for example, we were talking about Carlos Salinas and some of the happenings and events in Mexico, and I brought a different perspective, challenged that. It was considered, it was validated. But I also kind of recognized that in many of my classes, I didn't have many other Latino students and friends in my classes. So in kind of looking back, I do recognize that in many situations, I might have been in a class with very few Latino students, except for maybe my classes in Spanish and Portuguese, which I did feel were more represented in terms of our Latino students. I was fortunate in that I had a very strong mentor. So I, through work study, worked for a professor who was a professor in Spanish and Portuguese, Professor Arcadio Diaz Quiñones, who was not only a wonderful person, but a tremendous mentor for me. He hosted me and Amy over to his house. He and his wife would have us over for cafe and just kind of to talk. And so I think having a faculty member who is supportive for you, who knows you, is really crucial so that you can have positive experiences or have others in the faculty that you can speak to when there are challenges that you face. So I was aware of maybe others who had difficult experiences or didn't feel as supported in their classes, but I myself didn't have those same experiences.
Thank you. Amy, what was your thesis topic and how did you find that experience?
My thesis topic was on how opera in the late 1800s helped create a sense of national identity in Italy. So looking specifically at the operas of Giuseppe Verdi and how that helped establish a kind of common narrative of what it meant to be Italian. So it was a really unique topic. I was interested in it because of a course I took on opera. I think it was the music department, and I was excited about it because it also combined my certificate in Italian language, so looking really specifically at the language that was used in some of the operas, as well as this sense of identity that was really kind of personal to me in how is it that we construct identity and how is it that we come to tell ourselves who we are. And for me, my senior thesis just kind of took all of those ideas and kind of put them together and wrapped them up with a nice bow. So it was really a powerful experience. It was definitely hard in that I had never done anything like it, to do some independent research and to be organized, but I felt really supported by my advisor in anthropology, as well as one of the Italian professors that I worked closely with in the Italian department, which was also a small department, to get an idea, in a sense. I think there were parts of it that I had to write in Italian. I'm thinking, I can't remember exactly, but I remember it was a really rigorous experience that definitely had a lot of benefit. And I think because I'm a linear thinker and, I had checklists and kind of moved through the process, it was manageable. Just to stay disciplined and get it done. But it was a really unique experience, and I enjoyed it overall.
Thank you. Joe, what was your thesis topic, and how did you find that experience?
Yes. So my thesis topic was on ballet folklorico in New York City. And so I had an opportunity to explore the ballet folklorico scene. I got to attend events and performances and practices and meet those who were involved in really expanding and developing the folklorico dance in New York City. It was a tremendous opportunity. Ballet folklorico was something that Amy and I did here at Princeton during our undergraduate years. It was something that was very important to me in terms of my Princeton experience, the community that I had, the art that I was able to learn about and perform, and the way that it connected me to my culture and background. There was something that I just really loved about ballet folklorico. And so the wonderful part about Princeton in my senior thesis was I got to explore that topic and really understand more about what it means to build a folklorico community, to dance folkloric dances here in the United States, and how that may have a different meaning than someone who is from Mexico and learns the art there. And so I thought it's a unique context in which people are dancing folklorico in New York. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to not only learn about anthropology and methods of research and finishing a publication of this magnitude, but also on a topic that was very personal and special to me.
Thank you so much. Amy, what was your social life like at Princeton?
Yeah. My social life at Princeton, I think, was pretty robust. I did as we mentioned, Joe and I danced in Ballet Folklorico. So we definitely had a group of friends that overlapped from our dance group and from Chicano Caucus at that time. It was kind of a lot of the same people. I was also part of a eating club on Prospect, so I did have friends from there. And one of the nice things that Joe and I found once we started dating, later on in our Princeton life, was how for the two of us those circles kind of then intertwined, and we were able to move between two worlds essentially and find that we had I think really rich experience where we could authentically be ourselves in both spaces. So that was really powerful, and I think for us, that Ballet Folklorico, that was family too. So we would go from being on Prospect and being at the eating club and having the costume and dress up theme nights to let's go to Spelman or let's go to Dodd or where's the Latino party and let's wrap up the night. So lots of good memories with that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Joe, what was your social life like at Princeton?
Yes, so my social life at Princeton was chaotic in some ways. I think, I remember early in my first year just walking out to Prospect Avenue, going all the way to the end of the street, and over the course of the night, just making my way back, meeting people, going to different places. I had some friends through my residential college. Over our first year, we kind of started to form, and by the end of the first year, I had a strong group of friends through the residential college. And as Aimee and I got to dance together and get to know each other in Folklorico, we had a very strong group, family, social group through Ballet Folklorico. I think for me, there were some moments that I felt unfulfilled because in many ways I would interact with people and be in social spaces, but sometimes lacked some of the deep connections that I was hoping for. I studied abroad. I think part of the reason for studying abroad was not only the wonderful opportunity that it was, but also to just remove myself a little bit from the Princeton scene and Princeton experience. And when I returned from study abroad, I think I was not only just had different experiences, I was more comfortable in my own skin and was able to have a social life that I think was much more comfortable for me, where I wasn't trying to meet others' expectations, but just enjoyed the company of a smaller group of people. And that was something that I think I really remember from my Princeton experience. So I'm someone where I come back to reunions, I see a lot of people, I connect with a lot of folks, I enjoy that. And at the same time, I think there's a much smaller set of people that I have now a strong relationship with that I'm comfortable being with. So,
Yeah. I think that study abroad and Joe coming back to that was kind of when we kind of connected as well. And I think that's when you're comfortable in your own skin. And
If you don't mind me asking, where did you study abroad and why did you choose that? And was that connected to your Latino background and reconnecting with Princeton? Like, how did that place bring you to where you are now? Basically?
Sure. Yeah. So I studied abroad in Salamanca, Spain. I remember that it had a strong offering in terms of the academic program, the opportunity to maybe take classes at the University of Salamanca, so I wouldn't just have to be taking courses in a distinct program. I also remember that it allowed me the chance to advance some of my requirements in various programs in terms of anthropology, my major there, in terms of my certificate in Spanish and Portuguese. So I had never traveled to Europe before that point. So I'd been to Latin America, but I hadn't been to Europe or other continents. And so it gave me an opportunity to travel to a whole new place. And then over the course of the semester, I was able to travel to other parts of Europe. So that's something that I hadn't experienced before Princeton. I knew it was something that I wanted to do as part of my Princeton experience. And so that was a great opportunity and time to do it.
I think for me, I did a little study abroad program during the summer. I loved Princeton so much that I didn't want to leave it at any point during the regular academic year. So I did a summer program that was an anthropology field school in Mexico, in the Yucatan. And I had a really great experience, and that's where I started also to think about this idea of studying and performing identity. As I was there, I visited the cultural sites of Chichen Itza. We stayed in Merida, and to really develop my skills as an anthropologist of observation and field work and interviewing. That for me really planted the seed for what I later did with my senior thesis. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Amy. Amy, you mentioned you were involved in eating clubs,
Mm-hmm.
or an eating club.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there was a relationship between, like, a specific relationship between the Latino and certain eating clubs, or what was the relationship in general?
Mm-hmm.
I was in an eating club, and I felt very welcomed as a Latina student. I did become an officer, so my senior year I lived in the eating club. I was really involved, mostly because I had a really great group of friends. As far as the Latino experience, I don't think that we necessarily like tried to recruit or go after a certain group or another. So I can't really speak to that, but I know that I felt welcome, and we'd often bring friends, and
Were you guys in the same eating club?
yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, Joe,
Mhm.
did you see any relationship between the Latinos and the eating clubs?
So in terms of the Latinos in the eating clubs, it was clear that where Latinos were welcomed or not welcomed, and I say that in the sense of just where people would hang out. And the eating clubs are very network oriented. And so if there were folks that you connected with or knew through various means, you then had an opportunity to experience the eating club and be welcomed into it. So because they're very networked organizations, institutions, we saw where Latino networks existed and where they didn't exist, and that was pretty clear. And so I think my choice was not necessarily based off of that, but I think that I ended up in a club where Amy and I felt supported, where Amy was part of the officer group, and we were able to welcome and join others. We were also very encouraging of students who came after us to explore the eating club scene, and we felt that the eating club scene would be strengthened by having more Latinos participate in more clubs. So while we chose one specific club, our view was that Latinos should feel that they can have a place in any of the clubs that fits their particular interest or background or ability to connect. So during our time, there were definitely differences in what was available. And I say available in the sense of where the networks were, where people were, where you could go and experience it before you became a member.
Okay, thank you. Amy, were your closest friends during your undergraduate years of similar background than you?
Yes and no. Yes, I think many of my friends were of similar background, in the sense that we came from households with two parents, where our parents went to college. My roommates were from 3 out of the 4 of us my freshman year were from California. So I did have friends with similar backgrounds in that regard. I could also flip that statement and say, no, I didn't have that many friends who were Mexican American as well. It just kind of depended where I was and who I was with at that time. I did have a lot of friends, as I said, who kind of share that same experience, being from 2 parents, college educated household.
Joe, were your closest friends during your undergraduate years of a similar background?
So my closest friends during my Princeton years, I would say some were from Ballet Folklorico, and in that way, many were Latino. Some friends through kind of other activities and interests. Many were white. And so my own identity is complicated in that I'm of Mexican American descent as well as European descent, white descent. So I found myself kind of in unique situations or scenarios in that when I'm with friends who are predominantly white, more of maybe my Latino identity kind of came forward. When I kind of in social circles with other Latinx friends, I kind of felt sometimes maybe out of place as well, and that I had different identities as well. So when you ask in terms of when you ask did I have friends of similar backgrounds, it's a little difficult for me to answer that question. And I think, my own background was really understood in different contexts and when I was with different people. And so I think that's something I really appreciated about Princeton, is that I had the opportunity to participate and be authentic friends with many others from across the campus. I didn't feel as though I had to be friends with only Latinx, Latino students, or I could only be friends with white students. I think I had an opportunity to make friends, authentic friends, really from across the university.
Okay, thanks. Amy, you mentioned you were involved in a few different groups and activities. You talked about the eating club, you talked about Body Folklorico. Were there any other activities that you were involved in, clubs?
Sure.
Or anything else?
Yeah, at Princeton, I was involved in a number of different groups, including the Catholic group on campus, the Aquinas group. I would attend Mass either with Father Tom at that time, 10 p.m. on Sunday, or I would actually go to St. Paul, just the Catholic church in town. I did some volunteer service there as well in their religious education department. I was a volunteer coach with the Dillon Youth basketball that we had here on campus. So it's just local children, and we run a basketball league. And I was a coach for a couple of years, so I enjoyed that. I also was involved in Ballet Folklorico. I was involved in the eating club. I think I'm missing
Your work.
And I did work study in the library, which was really neat. I got to work with ephemera or different materials, pamphlets from Latin America, and I would create a catalog for them essentially down on the D floor of Firestone Library. So that was a unique opportunity as well. I think that kind of covers it. I don't know if I did anything else. It might come back to me. But
Okay, Joe, were you involved in any other specific
I
clubs?
I remember one
groups?
more. I remembered one more. I was also involved in outdoor action. I did that for a couple of years, which is the freshman orientation activity where they take kids into the woods and let them bond. So for a couple of years, I was a support staff person for that, where my roommate and I did water drops. So as the kids would be hiking, we rented the minivan, or we had the minivan, and we would meet them and give them donuts or treats and give them their clean water. So I did that as well.
I would say my primary activity at Princeton was Ballet Folklorico. It was something that I was very committed to, spent a lot of time on. I would participate in Chicano Caucus. I had a very good friend, one of our friends who stood up for us at our wedding as a groomsman, was also very involved in both Ballet Folklorico and Chicano Caucus, and he was really a catalyst for me to participate in Chicano Caucus. I think other than that, I worked a lot. So I had jobs at Princeton. I worked with a faculty member. I delivered newspapers at 5 a.m. There were other kind of jobs that I did to help pay for my expenses and the kind of traveling back and forth to my home in Nebraska to Princeton. So my parents were very supportive. They helped where they could, but I was also responsible for a lot of expenses, and so I did jobs and work study while I was here at Princeton.
I think too, just to talk a little bit more about Ballet Folklorico, when we joined as freshmen, the group was fairly small, maybe 6 members or so. We had a few upperclassmen, and I think our class year we had 4 or 5 new members that really added new life force to the group to expand it. And then each year, as Joe shared, we just really studied intensely. Growing up, I had been an athlete and never a dancer, so this was something that was unique for me to learn about and practice. But when I did, I just felt so connected and so back home in a sense through the dance. Joe and I really took that on. I think our sophomore year, Joe was the artistic director of the group, and when he went to study abroad our junior year, someone had to take over that role, and that's when I stepped up. I met now our compadre, another colleague of ours, who he was the business director and I was the artistic director, and we worked together, and we really grew the group and mentored the younger students that came under us, expanding the dances, but also expanding the presence of Ballet Folklorico on campus so that it became a recognized and celebrated experience, not just for those few students who were in the group, but for the wider campus and the larger Princeton community as well. And I think even after graduation, when we stayed in Princeton and Joe worked here at Princeton, we continued to be involved with Folklorico and to mentor those students and to really grow the group across multiple class years and experiences. So.
Okay, thank you. Aimee, how did Princeton affect your subsequent life and career?
Yeah. Princeton really had a huge impact on my significant life and career after. One, I met my husband here at Princeton, but two, the friends that I made, the experiences I had, the way I learned about research, the way I was able to develop my interest and really grow in my values and celebrate who I was, helped me later in life in doing what I do today in education. After Princeton, I came back and did a semester through the teacher preparation program, where I earned my teaching credential as a New Jersey public school teacher. I had a really powerful experience with teacher prep, where I worked on a summer program for local area public school teachers doing inquiry-based science learning and math professional development. And that one experience really, that is what I do today. And just having that opportunity to learn about pedagogy and to develop curriculum, that's what I do now. And it started here at Princeton. Mm-hmm.
So in terms of how Princeton shaped my career and my post kind of Princeton life, so Princeton had a tremendous impact on me. It was an amazing and incredible experience. By no means perfect and wonderful all the time, but truly transformational. And I knew at the point of graduation that I wanted to be a part of Princeton and or higher education and make opportunities and support students in ways that I had been supported. There was a particular dean here who still works here 20 years later, Dean Dunn, who was a wonderful support to me and to Ballet Folklorico. I asked Dean Dunn at the end of the senior year, how do you do what you do? And he recommended that I look into admission jobs that were often available to students who were recent graduates. I then was fortunate to work in admissions at Princeton University for 2 years. After that, I worked for 4 additional years at Princeton University in different capacities. My favorite job was to support students in their own activities, and so it was kind of a full circle experience for me, where after having graduated, I was able to participate in admitting students, in fundraising to provide financial support for the student experience, and to support students in their activities and individual growth and the community building. So after that, I went to graduate school in higher education, earned my PhD in that field. My PhD advisor also was a Princetonian, and so we were able to connect on that as well. So I'm working higher education today. I probably will for my entire career, and I have Princeton to thank for that. Not only for my first professional career opportunity, but for putting me on a path where I knew this is what I wanted to do and giving me the opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Okay, and this is the wrap-up question.
Yep.
Aimee, what would Aimee today tell young Aimee?
Yeah.
If there's anything.
Yep.
Yeah. I think Aimee today would tell young Aimee, just go, just you do you. You go out and continue to enjoy life and learning and meeting new people and trying new things. Keep that optimism and yeah. Sorry.
Hmm.
Joe, what would Joe today tell young Joe?
I think what I would tell myself, the advice I would give my younger self, would be that only you can chart your course, and that you need advice, you need guidance. You should, to some extent, value the opinion of others, but at the end of the day, it's really your journey, and to be reflective, to listen to yourself, and to honor that, and to be true to who you are. So I would provide that advice to my younger self.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You guys rocked it.
Thank you.
We're good?
Cut.
Cut.